Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Living on Lemonade podcast with Lauren. I hope everyone is doing well out in the world, wherever you are listening from. I'm realizing that as much as I would love to record weekly, um, I think I'm gonna aim for bi-weekly, twice a month for now. I do have lots of ideas, but as usual, I have other things going on from different angles with it being craft show or vendor market, whatever you want to call them, season. My mom and I make lots of creations and stuff, knitted, crocheted, quilted. So we've been in our kind of spare time when I can get a day or two to sew with her. We've been working on that. And then I'm also making some drink mitts and all the things. So a lot of my kind of spare time is spent in front of the sewing machine to use up some of my stash and just get ready for upcoming vendor shows. And we have three left in December. We just did two this past weekend, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, so we've got a few things we kind of want to that are like winter kind of Christmassy vibe theme that we want to have ready for our next show on December 6th, which is a couple weeks away. Yeah, so I'm digressing, but all that to say that I'm going to, I think, just stick to the 2 week schedule and the ideas that I have about collaborating with others. I'm going to do a brain dump and then perhaps schedule some interviews for the new year now that we're kind of I'm recording on Monday the 24th, so I'm going to release it as soon as I record it. And yeah, just kind of get lined up for the new year. I'm not always the best at I'm great at organizing certain things, but a lot of things I just kind of like do on the fly. And one thing I'm learning and leaning into is preparing more for things in the future, especially when it comes to this type of the offerings that I have and the podcast and all that stuff. So I'm kind of figuring it all out and learning to um not just I feel like right now I'm kind of like making room for things, but I would like it to be a more of a priority that just building it in better in my routine. And as I've said in previous podcast episodes lately, the priority really has been like my physical health. So even my spiritual practice has kind of gone by the wayside a little bit, but it's in knowing that I can pick it up whenever I want. It never goes away, but I feel drawn to prioritizing moving my body and all that stuff. So the next piece, as you kind of build things, you kind of take one block, make sure it's all settled, then take the next thing, right? So it's kind of building things onto each other. And I needed to shuffle things around a little bit and reprioritize. So my physical health has come first. And last week I swam 3 times, which is wonderful, and I'm super excited about that. Anyway, moving into today's topic, speaking of things that I've been planning and all that stuff, I wanted to just give a real honest account of my, not necessarily the process, but the outcome of something that I was working on recently, because I find that I've always being honest about my journey. Obviously, the podcast started very heavily on my grief journey after losing my dad, and grief it's interwoven, right? After you lose someone, especially somebody so foundational as like a parent. But grief is kind of one of the themes in this podcast that makes its appearance here and there as I navigate life. And I've always been honest about my journey. And there's some times that I feel that I need a little bit of a step away so that I can figure things out before I talk about it because it can kind of if you talk about things too soon in some circumstances, it can kind of um, move into the realm of like trauma dumping, right? So I've begun to understand and have more awareness and mindfulness around that and been able to discern whether I'm ready to talk about things. And part of that is just like also talking about the business things that I've been doing and being honest and open about when things don't work out. So that's what today's episode is when things don't work out the way you planned and not making it wrong. So if you've been kind of following me or in my world, you've probably seen that I was advertising a winter solstice retreat. It came to me Um, I knew after I've been thinking about doing retreats for a while, and then in the spring, I'm just doing a quick recap in case you haven't listened to like previous episodes because I'm sure I've talked about it. In the spring, I did I had four close friends join me for a weekend, kind of like a witchy intuitive development weekend to kind of like dip my toes and see if it was something I wanted to explore more. I loved it. I loved it so much. The connection and just the community and bringing like-minded women together, or people. I'm sure in the future I could have men too, if they feel called. But it it was a magical weekend, and I received very beautiful feedback from the ladies that were involved and encouraging me to pursue it. So I decided I wanted to, and I knew the next subject, like I knew that it was going to be nervous system nourishment. I didn't know when or where. I just kind of released it to the universe like I'll know when it's time, and it was. And what I felt pulled to was winter solstice. And so I kind of put things together. I was a little bit later than I wanted to be in advertising it. I was waiting for a couple of external um, like information from external sources to get that information so I could finalize pricing and all that. I did try very hard to make it as accessible as possible with still covering the costs of the food and the Airbnb and the facilitators that were coming in to yeah, to do their thing. And I got some really beautiful feedback on what I was offering. The feedback was, I really want to do this. I don't have the money right now, but I want to save for something in the future. Or I really want to do this, but it's so close to Christmas and we already have plans, or it's just really hard for me to make that work. So, all to say, it didn't work out. And last week, before I knew what the deadline was for the Airbnb to cancel without penalty. So I made sure that I kind of put in a last call, like I have to know so I can finalize plans. And yeah, that was the feedback. But I felt so great that people were reaching out and being like, I love what you're doing and I love this vision and it sounds incredible. And I hope that I can join you in the future. And that I'm gonna try. I always say this. I'm gonna try to make this short. Um, I've talked about some of these things before, but to kind of bring it together, when we do things from like an internal, intrinsic place. So me, I would describe this as soul led. I just had this like curiosity, this type kind of yearning to try this drive and everything, all the ideas and things just kind of flowed in very nicely. And that's kind of how I know that it's inner, like it's led from inside. It's a soul pull is what I kind of how I refer to it. Um, in that case, there's no external factors that are required for it. in terms of outcome, right? Because the second that we plan things based on how we think we should be doing things, careful with the shoulds, don't should on yourself, or what we think people might like, we're throwing, we're kind of throwing the magic out there, hoping to get the feedback from outside of ourselves, right? And so we're setting ourselves up for failure and disappointment in that sense that we have zero control over what people think about things. And if we're trying to cater to what we think things outside of ourselves are going to like, there's a disconnect there. And I've obviously been doing a lot of personal development kind of deep dive over the last couple of years. So a lot of these concepts I've been, learning about, but now I'm really like embodying and just like living it and understanding it in a on a deeper level. And I wanted to be really clean with my energy on how I approached doing these types of things, these types of offerings. There's courses I've offered before, and just like the timing also didn't work out. I'm sure I've talked about it in previous podcasts and stuff to bring you along on this journey. So I wanted to make sure that this retreat, because it felt so like I could just feel the vibe of it and it felt so good, I wanted to make sure that it was purely from how I was intuitively receiving it and putting it out there and not hinging on if other people were going to accept it and it was going to work, um, you know, kind of pleasing everyone else. I just knew that from inside, like what I wanted to give, it had to come from inside, pouring outwardly, and not looking for that, like, ooh, are people gonna like this? Obviously, I want good feedback because that means like it's working or whatever in that sense. But what I learned from this experience is I now I got some I did get like you almost need the feedback because there's like you it's how we learn. We put information out, we get information back, and then we learn from it. And then if we need to tweak or whatever, we get that. But I guess the deeper message I'm trying to say is the lack of signups did not affect how I feel about myself and my ability to deliver and serve others. That's kind of where I wanted to go. Self-worth. It wasn't hindering or hinging, whatever the right word is, on, I wasn't throwing myself out there expecting something from the outside world that I can't control in order to then validate how I feel about myself. But we see a lot of that, honestly. There's a lot of wounding in how people go about their businesses and why they even set up their businesses. And that's, you can go into a whole different conversation around that. But for me, the outcome was irrelevant to just my focus was just, ooh, I feel excited about this and I just want to put it out there. And if it flies, like if it works, then that is gonna be so magical. And if it doesn't, which is what the outcome was this time, this is how I look at it now. I don't see it as a failure because I had no expectation, right? I just kind of you put it out there and like hope that it works out because it's exciting and it feels good. But it was a beautiful learning experience for me. And how I see it now, I now have a framework for a retreat that's like the framework is ready to go. I have a whole itinerary and schedule and ideas for people to work with who are also wanting to work with me. And I did research to scope out different places that we can use. So, like, the legwork is done so that I can perhaps, with the feedback that I got, because winter solstice, it's like I like planning things. I feel drawn to planning things around natural cycles because that's been a big vibe for me and something I've been talking about a lot. Natural cycles and seasons and things like that, and really connecting back to the cycles and seasons of the earth and nature. And winter solstice is usually December 20th, 21st, super close to Christmas. So I didn't know if it was gonna work. I was like, I'm just putting this out there because like it feels good. But and one thing I will say now is I was kind of clinging to the idea that like it had to be right on solstice. And through this process, taking a step back and kind of reviewing it from like overhead, now I'm looking at like, does it have to be right on solstice weekend? It's kind of nice, especially if you're kind of like vibing and you believe in like tuning into the energies of things in the present. That's ideal. But if it's hard to work out, um, could we not do it the weekend before or right around there? And then perhaps do like an online or even just like an in-person on solstice, but not committing to like an entire weekend, right? Maybe someone can dedicate a couple hours in person or logging in online on solstice to kind of tune into the magic, but perhaps on a full weekend. So this has been like, what can I learn and and how can I, with the feedback that I've been given from those who are interested, but it's not working out this time. One, I learned perhaps not right on solstice weekend. Maybe we do it a little bit earlier. And two, advertise much earlier so people actually have the opportunity to like to squirrel away some money for it, right? Um, so it was great, great learning for me. And then in my review of it over the last few days, I thought like I was still kind of clinging to the idea of like I really want to do something for solstice though. So um I'm looking at maybe just my mom and I, if she's up for it, booking in the Airbnb that the gals and I went to in the spring that's like super small, so it'd be too small like I didn't want to use it for the what I had envisioned for the original winter solstice because we needed more space. But I'm like, I could use it again just to still just like get in the vibe of it and experience it myself, especially because I know there will be takeaways that I'll take from experiencing that and doing my own exploration to then bring into the next one. And I said, I thought to myself, like, who's to say I can't still do something that weekend and invite people to do like a plan B. And I have a practitioner who we use during our spring weekend that does trauma and tension release exercises, TRE, if you've heard of it. Otherwise, check it out. It is like a more of a I don't know if it's an Eastern modality. Like it's fairly new, but I would say more Eastern philosophy modality. It's I don't remember the founder's name, but essentially he went to countries that were at war and observed how people reacted to those situations. And what he noticed was children, after they were out of like the dangerous part, would shake and kind of release that tension and that trauma because trauma is how the body holds an experience that we weren't prepared to truly handle in the moment, like our nervous systems weren't prepared or able to deal with it fully to then just kind of like move through it so we can get stuck, we can get this like stuckness in our bodies. And he noticed that adults do not do that. So we've been kind of learned or conditioned through our upbringing to we end up holding on to these experiences. So he TRE is, and I've done a couple sessions, it's like you activate certain muscle groups and kind of fatigue them a little bit And then after you lay down and then you get into a position where your legs can kind of tremor, they shake, and that is the part where it's releasing tension and trauma from your body. There's no re-experiencing the whatever event. You can set an intention before if you want to release something from maybe a like I had set an intention to release something from like a specific around the time my dad died because I was not prepared to navigate that. And but then you like there's you're not necessarily like getting memories of anything, right? You're just laying there. It's kind of meditative. You just let your legs tremor as much as they need to. And then afterwards, there was a lot of like feelings of like bliss and just relaxed. When we did it in the spring, I had some things planned for the afternoon, but truly, like after we finished the session, everyone just wanted to have a nap. So I was like, let's go nap then. Let's listen to our bodies, and we will either do it later or not at all. So it was kind of leaving space for how things go and having like a loose schedule and some bit of planning, but also creating and being able to just navigate and allow space for what our bodies need. Because if you're, especially if you're looking at like nervous system nourishment, you don't want to force anything. So, anyway, I reached out to Katie and was like, are you available this day to do a session? So, looking at doing that, seeing who maybe wants to just join me for a couple hours on the weekend. I'll probably be at the Airbnb and just do my own thing. I have a couple other ideas of like my own personal practice and another offering that I'll be putting out later. I'll be getting it organized shortly. I do it every year, intuitive readings for the following year. So anyone who signs up for that, I'll probably be doing those, recording and just doing that intuitive work during my winter solstice weekend, which will be just a beautiful time to tune in intuitively. And yeah, so kind of like reframing and repackaging an original idea that can still, maybe it's sitting on a shelf right now, but it's still accessible for the next time, right? Maybe I reach out to the people who are interested and say like, "Hey, I'm looking at next year. Like I want to plan ahead so that people can save or just look at their schedules because I did really advertise it like late." So that was a big part of the learning experience and any other feedback. If anyone who's listening now hasn't reached out to me about the solstice retreat, if you have feedback, if you were thinking about it, let me know. Like, this is good information for me. So then I can also, we all have our blind spots, right? And we kind of get tuned into like, oh, it's got to be on solstice weekend. Well, if you're interested, but you'd like to do it a little earlier, let me know because that helps me to then better serve others, right? I'm taking an idea that came from inside and I want to bring it into the physical, manifested reality. Um, but it's good to get that feedback and the information so that I can kind of fine tune it and actually make it work, right? Yeah, so that's kind of been what's going on my way. And I just wanted to share openly and honestly that sometimes it doesn't work out how we envision in the moment. I still feel strongly about that weekend, and I think that it's going to work out in the future. And what I've been seeing, it's going to play out maybe in 2026. And that's kind of how it works sometimes. And just a reminder, like as long as you're keeping your energy clean and it's really something from inside that you're bringing out into the world to serve and connect people and have that sense of community and that healing work and whatever the intention that you have, it at the end of the day has nothing to do with who you are and like how you show up. So I haven't beaten myself up at all about this. This is all just information. It's me being curious and excited to try new things and bring people together and have those like beautiful experiences because our spring retreat was just incredible. And it's something I'm feeling pulled to do is bring people together and we have that like vulnerability, that community, that openness and there's a magic to it. So I know that it's not going to happen in an in-person group this solstice, but um I am hopeful. I know that it's going to work out in some capacity. It'll work out for a future year. Yeah, so if you're dreaming something, if something's on your heart, bring it, like bring it out in the best way that you can into the world, but then like release the how or the when, and just know that if it's something you feel so strongly from an inside point and it's not to get validation from outside, you're just bringing it from inside out to serve and just create this beautiful magic. Just know that it's going to work out. It might look a little different than you originally see it, or it might be on a different timeline, but it's gonna work out. And when it does, you're gonna get you're gonna get that like soul I don't want to say validation, but just that reward. Like you'll feel that. Yeah, so I think that's all I want to say for today. I do have another idea for a podcast episode, but that's one that I want to actually jot some notes down because it'll be um maybe a bigger subject, but I do actually want to be a little organized and not just kind of riffing as I am today and for most of my episodes. So I hope everyone's doing well. Have a beautiful week, and yeah, find me online. Say hi if we've never met. I'd love to have you just pop in and say hi. And I don't I don't get much feedback about the podcast. Like once in a while, a couple friends will, but mostly I'm just speaking out into the ethers and hoping it's landing for people. So if you want to say hi, I'd love to meet you. And yeah, take care, everyone, and we will see you in a couple weeks in the next episode. Bye, everyone.